And what
We
page are you on,
are.
Swami?
We are on page 178. And the master last week finished singing two lines of that song about Kali being the wish fulfilling tree. So he was talking about mind and pure mind and Brahman being the same. He made that statement. He was talking about the avatars having to own a little bit of ego or a little bit of delusion in order to inhabit a body and come down to be teachers amongst us. And it gave us some pretty strict teaching saying God cannot be realized if there's the slightest attachment to the things of the world. A thread cannot pass through the eye of a needle if the tiniest fiber sticks out. So he talks about that, and then he talks about how for someone who's attained knowledge of God, that their anger and their jealousy are just like lines in the water. They're not. They don't hold on to their anger. They may be angry in the moment, justifiably so, but they won't hold a grudge or carry it with them. So then we have the master singing in his melodious voice, "Come, let us go for a walk, O mind, to Kali, the wish-fulfilling tree, and there beneath it gather the four fruits of life." Sri Ramakrishna went out on the southeast veranda of his room and sat down. Krishna and the other devotees accompanied him. Hazra too was sitting there. The master said to Krishna with a smile, "Hazra is not a man to be trifled with. If one finds a big dargah here," referring to himself, "then Hazra is a small dargah." All laughed at the master's words. A certain gentleman, Navakumar by name, came to the door and stood there. At the sight of the devotees, he immediately left. Oh, egotism incarnate. We read this. We'll keep going here. Oh, egotism incarnate. Yeah, I saw the man at the door, and the man wouldn't come in and sit with the rest of the devotees. He just wanted to talk to Thakur alone. And Thakur didn't like that idea. When one is going to learn of life, to learn of the spirit, one should go in any condition, in any way possible. About 9:30 in the morning, Prankrishna took leave of the master, and soon afterward a minstrel sang some devotional songs to the accompaniment of a stringed instrument. The master was listening to the songs when Kedar Chatterjee, a household devotee, entered the room clad in his office clothes. He was a man of devotional temperament and cherished the attitude of the gopis of Vrindavan. Words about God would make him weep. The sight of Kedar awakened in the master's mind the episode of Vrindavan in Sri Krishna's life. Intoxicated with divine love, the master stood up and sang, addressing Kedar. Tell me, O friend, how far is the grove where Krishna, my beloved, dwells? His fragrance reaches me even here, but I am tired and I can walk no farther. Sri Ramakrishna assumed the attitude of Sri Radha to Krishna and went into deep samadhi while singing the song. He stood there, still as a picture on canvas, tears of divine joy running down both of his cheeks. Kedar knelt before the master. Touching his feet, he chanted a hymn. We worship the Brahman consciousness in the lotus of the heart, the undifferentiated, who is adored by Hari, Hara, and Brahma, who is attained by yogis in the depths of their meditation, the scatterer of the fear of birth and death, the essence of knowledge and truth, the primal seed of the world. Can you see this picture going on here in Thakur's room? He's in samadhi, standing there. Here's a devotee who cries at the name of God, on his knees, bowing down before him and chanting this beautifully, highly tuned spiritual thought. After a time, the master regained consciousness of the relative world. Soon, Kedar took his leave and returned to his office in Calcutta. At midday, Ramlal brought the master a plate of food that had been offered in the Kali temple. Like a child, he ate a little of everything. Later in the afternoon, several Marwari devotees entered the master's room, where Rakal and M were seated. A Marwari devotee: Sir, what is the way? Master: There are two ways. One is the path of discrimination. The other is that of love. Discrimination means to know the distinction between the real and the unreal. God alone is the real and permanent substance. All else is illusory and impermanent. The magician alone is real. His magic is illusory. This is discrimination. Discrimination and renunciation. Discrimination means to know the distinction between the real and the unreal. Renunciation means to have a dispassion for things of the world. One cannot acquire them all of a sudden. They must be practiced every day. One should renounce woman in gold mentally at first. Then, by the will of God, one can renounce it both mentally and outwardly. It is impossible to ask the people of Calcutta to renounce all for the sake of God. One has to tell them to renounce mentally. Through the discipline of constant practice, right? This is that constant practice of the presence. This is what Brother Lawrence is teaching. And really, so many of the teachers, actually all of the teachers that we've studied so far, have talked about this need for constant practice. And, I reiterate it here really for my own self, to change our view of the way that we practice. This idea of a little bit of practice in the morning and a little bit of practice at night is not a substitute for the practice of living, for the practice of life. Just your every waking moment is a prayer. Your every action is a prayer. Everything that you expose yourself to during the day, it is an offering to the divine. You're offering it on your shrine, your inner shrine. And so to live with this kind of awareness is the way that we get this profound God experience. It's through this constant association with the mind, with God in the mind, this learning to see him everywhere, to unsee the assumptions of the mind, to do away with the wrong thinking about what life is and what we are. We live in this beautiful mystery, just an amazing show of the divine newness in every moment, with a constant changing display of all manner of love arranged in a myriad of ways, telling a million stories simultaneously about God, about the divine. We won't be able to see that if we just have a casual approach to God. This is our mother. This is our very source of being. This is our immortality. If any of those words don't inspire us, then time for some real sitting, time for some real thinking. Through the discipline of constant practice, one is able to give up attachment to lust and greed. That is what the Gita says. By practice, one acquires uncommon power of mind, right? This is what we have to do to find that stillness, that renunciation of even thinking. When I went through those sannyas vows and sitting around that homa fire, we sat there for over an hour with the bell leaves, dipping them in ghee and then renouncing, something, and tossing the leaf in the fire. And it would start, of course, we first started out externally with all manner of, the material things in the world. One by one, we throw them in the fire. And then it went into thinking, the thoughts of the mind that were contrary to God, or that were selfish, or that were indulgent. We renounced all of those. And then it went even one step beyond that, to even the impetus of thought, to even the sense of discontent. And we renounced all of that. And so this is a constant way of life for us through the day, constantly discerning. It's like whatever those things are that the world is convincing us that we need, we always hold them up and stop and look at them from all sides and think, what is the fruit of this? What will this bring into my life? What will this do to my mind? What will this do to my perspectives on life? So we have to have, by practice, we have to acquire this uncommon power of mind. Then one doesn't find it difficult to subdue the sense organs and to bring anger, lust, and the like under control. Right? It's when you're living in the mind that the mind controls you because you think it's you controlling yourself. We say things like, oh, gee, I want a cookie. I'm going to go get a cookie. And see, there's no control necessary in there because I'm the one who wants the cookie and I'm the one who's going to go and buy the cookie. And so we're just entrenched in a slavery that we don't recognize because we're fooled into thinking that the slave owner is ourself. and that what the slave owner wants we want, right? But that's not the case. The body gets that taste for the cookie. It brings up that memory of that cookie in the mind, and then if you being identified, being attached to the image of the cookie in the mind and the memory of its delicious taste, then you have to go buy a cookie and you're forced to go and serve the body again, as if that was the first time that day. But in fact, we've been serving our body and mind all day long and doing it happily in our delusion. But when we realize that the mind and the body are our disciples, that we are the teacher, and that it's up to us to bring this toddler of the mind into good behavior, and to make sure that this horse of a body runs in a straight line, runs in a proper direction, and stops when it's told to stop. So this takes that uncommon control of mind. First is, of course, knowing that you are not the mind. That's the first trick. You can't control it from the inside, right? You have to understand that you are out. You are the perceiver of mind, the perceiver of changing mind. Such a man behaves like a tortoise, which, once it has tucked in its limbs, never puts them out. You cannot make the tortoise put his limbs out again, though you chop it to pieces with an axe. That's the kind of discernment, the kind of we need those, what would you call that? Snapping turtle. We need snapping turtle renunciation. So that when we hold on to our purity, or when we say no to something or say yes to something, there's no change to that. It's absolute. We've set our goal, we've set our stride. We won't stop until the goal is reached. That kind of tenacity, so that if you say no to that cookie, when the mind comes back and asks for it again, don't get soft. Oh, okay, you can have half a cookie. It's not like that. Our no is no and our yes is yes. If the mind comes back and asks again, you get a scolding. What is this? We've said no. Who is there to counter? Who is there to desire? No. And it's finished. And after a while, the mind is trained. The mind won't keep bringing back the same desire over and over and over again, and until you fall. Because, see, that's part of the wily nature of the mind, that kind of deception. We lie to ourselves. So we'll say no, 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 but we keep accepting the mind coming back and reoffering it again. And eventually we get overwhelmed and we get tired of fighting, or whatever our excuse is for the day, and we give in. You see, and we've lost the goal. We've now added another day to our ignorance. And so to take this kind of intensity as an inspiration, not as a must-have or, a type A, egoistic, we're going to do all or nothing kind of thing. Not like that at all. This is the decision to ask your partner to marry you. It's that kind of time in spiritual life when we face our practice in this way, that we're asking God for marriage. We are, by practicing and by doing our practice and by sitting in the company, in the presence of the beloved every day, we're asking for marriage. And what kind of attitude should we have toward our beloved if we're asking for marriage? We're not dating anymore. We're not deciding, oh, should I or shouldn't I? We've said no. We're coming home. This is what we want. You are all we want. And so it's a matter of bringing our full self to that, to that offering. to come to the beloved ready to be married, to give up everyone else and everything else, because we have found the one. This is the one for us. I'm picturing all of you guys standing up in some stadium somewhere during halftime and proposing to the beloved. Marwari devotee: revered sir, you just mentioned two paths. What is the other path? Master: the path of bhakti, or zealous love of God. Weep for God in solitude with a restless soul, and ask him to reveal himself to you. Cry to your mother Shyama with a real cry, O mind, and how can she hold herself from you? There's two things here. One is this weeping for God in solitude, never as a show, never as a demonstration of your faith, but in your own sweet time with the beloved, you bring out how you feel and what you're going through. And he reiterates that same kind of earnestness, that same kind of sincerity in the next sentence when he says, cry to your mother Shyama. How? Not just a cry, but a real cry, an earnest cry, a cry that comes from inside, where you're aware of what your discernment has taught you. And when you're aware of what Vivekananda has taught us, that there is nothing in this world that can quench the hunger of the soul. So read that once. That's all that's necessary. And by faith, we live accordingly. By faith, we hold this ground for ourselves. The Marwari devotee: sir, well, what is the meaning of the worship of the personal God? And what is the meaning of God without form or attribute? Master: as you recall your father by his photograph, so likewise the worship of the image reveals in a flash the nature of reality. Do you know what God with form is like? Like bubbles rising in an expanse of water. Various divine forms are seen to rise out of the great akasha of consciousness. The incarnation of God is one of these forms. The primal energy sports, as it were, through the activities of a divine incarnation. What is there in mere scholarship? God can be attained by crying to him with a longing heart. There is no need to know many things. Right? This path of devotion, all you need to know is the unconditioned love of the divine for you, and all of the suggested grace that implies, all of the great mercy that implies, all of the freedom that implies. That's all we need to know in order to find the beloved through bhakti. Just know, with everything in your soul, with everything in your mind, with everything in your heart, just know there is no love for you like the love of God. There is no fault in that love, no shortcoming in that love, no faltering in that love, no condition in that love. You can crawl into God's kitchen wearing anything you want, in any condition you are, and sit in your own mess on the floor. And God's only concern will be for your betterment. His only concern would be to get you cleaned up and standing up on your own and moving forward in life in a positive way, because that's what love does. There is no need to know many things. He who is an acharya has to know different things. One needs a sword and a shield to kill others, but to kill oneself, a needle or a nail knife is all you need. One ultimately discovers God by trying to know who this I is. Is this I the flesh, the bones, the blood, or the marrow? Is it the mind or the buddhi? Analyzing thus, you realize at last that you are none of these. This is called the process of neti. Not this, not this. One can neither comprehend nor touch the Atman. It is without qualities or attributes. See how he mixes these things together. He's talking about the path of devotion, and now he's bringing in some jnana practices with this, not this, not this. in order to arrive at the Atman, this beloved, the divine. He's keeping that image of God in the mind and pulling in jnanic practices. That's what he means when he says, to tie your jnani in the corner of your dhoti. It's like, always be aware of the one without a second. But as you're a bhakti, know that that's the marriage. Right now, we're in the betrothal and the engagement. Waiting for our fiance to show up, and take us. So the mind, the reason we do the neti is because God can't be objectified. You can't experience God as an object. God is the joy that you feel in the presence. God is the love that you're feeling and experiencing in the presence. God is the wisdom that arises in the presence. It can't be looked at. It's just a simple surrendering to and knowing in a thing in and of itself. But according to the path of devotion, God has attributes. To a devotee, Krishna is spirit. His abode is spirit, and everything about him is spirit. The Marwari devotees saluted the master and took their leave. At the approach of the evening, Sri Ramakrishna went to look at the sacred river. The lamp was lighted in his room. The master chanted the hallowed name of the Divine Mother and meditated on her. Then the evening worship began in the various temples. The sound of gongs floating on the air mingled with the murmuring voice of the river. Peace and blessedness reigned everywhere. These pictures of the master like this, they're not from a time in the past far away. This is what life looks like when the master is present with you now. You can sit on the back porch and just sit there and have your little cup of tea or whatever it is and look and enjoy all of the facts of nature around you. And that will be one thing. But it's another thing to sit in that same environment with the thoughts of the divine, of the beloved, dwelling in all things, speaking to you in every sound you're hearing, touching you with all of the materials around you, and nurturing you just by the thoughts and the sobriety of sitting with intention in the presence of divine love. And this description of Dakshineshwar here can be a description of Lafayette, Colorado, or Houston, with a lot of work, Houston, Texas, or Portland. That God, it is God that makes life beautiful. The sooner we realize that, we'll stop looking for it outside. We'll start to begin to understand that our living room can become the most beautiful, most satisfying place in the world if the presence of God is recognized and nourished there. When I first moved into an apartment back in San Francisco, it's kind of cold and I don't know, just very impersonal. And I remember going through with my friend Philip, and we went into each room of that apartment with one of those smudge sticks. You know what those are? Those collect those bundles of sage that are tied together. The Native Americans used to use it to purify an area. And so I walked through every room in the new apartment, and I saged each corner. I was making it up as I went. I wasn't doing anything in particular. I saged each corner. And then I sat there and imagined 5 good things that could happen in that room at some point in life, just 5 good things that could happen there. And just going from room to room like that and saging and imagining good things, changed the atmosphere, changed the attitude of everything in that room. And that was just a material thing. If you go through the same process in your home, with the Divine Mother and establish her in each room. Put something in that room. Say, Mother, in this room, this rock is yours. You can sit on this table anytime, in the kitchen. This little shrine here on the wall, Mother, is yours. This is where you are in my kitchen. And you go to your bedroom, that picture there, my mom, that's for you. And we build a life like that. we build an awareness like that. And in that love, God manifests, because that love that we're experiencing is the verb of the presence of God. That love we're experiencing is the our experience in ignorance of the unchanging absolute love of the divine, that in its truth would overwhelm us to the point of no separation. There would be no separate I to maintain anymore. So again, just that beautiful evening, as the approach of evening, the Sri Ramakrishna went out to look at the sacred river. The lamp was lighted in his room. The master chanted the hallowed name of the Divine Mother and meditated on her. Then evening worship began in the various temples. The sound of gongs floating on the air mingled with the murmuring voice of the river. Peace and blessedness reign everywhere. Chapter 8, the Master's Birthday Celebration at Dakshineshwar. Sunday, February 18th, 1883. Sri Ramakrishna arrived at Govinda Mukherjee's house at Belgaria, near Calcutta. Besides Narendra, Ram, and other devotees, some of Govinda's neighbors were present. The master first sang and danced with the devotees. After the kirtan, they sat down. Many saluted the master. Now and then he would say, "Bow before God. Bow before God." Always that reminder, touch my feet, that's fine. But you're always bowing before the Lord in awareness of that presence. It is God alone, he said, who has become all of this. You can just see him looking around the room, all of this. And he wouldn't just be saying it, he would be there half drunk on this knowledge, looking and seeing the beloved all around the room as he's saying that, and then telling you, bow before the Lord. What an atmosphere. What a man. What an amazing, amazing, amazing scene. It is God alone, he said, who has become all of this. But in certain places, for instance, in a holy man, there is a greater manifestation than in others. You may say there are wicked men also. That is true, even as there are tigers and lions. But one need not hug the tiger god. One should keep away from him and salute him from a distance. Take water, for instance. Some water may be drunk, some may be used for worship, and some for bathing, and some only for washing dishes. So you see this way of living in the world. It's such a peaceful way. It's like he's not judging any of these folks. He's saying there's tiger gods out there. There's some people, who have not developed their minds, have not developed their characters, don't care to do such things. And that those people still should be saluted. They should still be honored and respected, for the divine spark that makes us all one. That's where all of this equality has to come from. And until all of us see it, it's the dog's curly tail is going to keep snapping back into its curl. We have to see this divine spark in everyone, even our politicians. Everywhere, always, we have to have this practice, and we have to respect others as human beings. I'm repeating this for myself again. Because it's so easy this day and age to read about these groups of people and these particulars of all these happenings going on. And, it seems that the mood of the times is this separation, is a real disdain, a real hatred of others, and doing it in big box form. There's no nuance to it. And so it's a real challenge for us as spiritual seekers not to fall prey to this. We have to be the unifying arms that are reaching across these divides. We have to be the person who can talk to anybody. And that is a tall order. Boy, don't we know it. But it is what it is to be a child of the mother. That's what we are. That's what we do. That's how we are. One should keep away from the tiger god and salute him from a distance. Take water, for instance. Some water may be drunk, some may be used for worship, some for bathing, and some only for washing clothes. So all of us have their role. That's, another way of seeing this teaching right here is that all of us in any condition that we're presently at, we may not be useful in a big way, but we could be used as a dish rag. we, we could be used to clean the base of the toilet off. we can we all have our part, and so that's the wonder of it. God isn't fixing you up for something. God is using you to the degree that you're available to her for right now, in your life. And so, there's that wonderful story in the Ramayana where they're building the bridge out to Lanka, and in the cartoon series of it anyway, there's this little well, I guess it's in the actual story itself. There's the chipmunk, and that's how the chipmunk gets his stripes on his back, is because while everybody else is out there trying to build this bridge, bringing all this dirt and these boulders and everything to build this bridge across the ocean, the chipmunk is going and rolling in the dust, getting himself all dirty, running all the way out to the end of the bridge and shaking off the dust, and turning around and running and getting himself dusty again, back out there and doing it. And Krishna, Rama, sees him doing this and reaches down and just strokes him, blesses him for doing his part. God recognizes even those small things that we make efforts at and do. That doesn't have to be great things. Just one earnest showing of compassion is a beautiful thing. It will change a life, if not yours, certainly the other person's. And so don't think that your work is somewhere in the future. Your work is right now. Your work is all around you. And I'm so much enjoying. I won't. Is Rena online right now? Is Rena here? I'm going to talk good about Rena behind her back. She's at that old folks home, and she's been writing me. I've been doing these daily blogs now for almost, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. Every single one of them that she watches, she sends me a thank you note. And in that thank you note, she describes what's going on at the home, all these people that she's with that have Alzheimer's and are disabled or can't move or can't do this or can't do that. And she's just doing her very best to serve all of them. Today she helped a woman figure out how to turn off her stove, and it's like, and it's just such a beautiful thing, that she could be one of the inmates there in an old folks home, just bitter and complaining and sad and, dying, and just go on about dying. But she doesn't. She's there in that, and she's in just as difficult a shape as anybody else. But her mind is on everyone else. Her mind is on going around and she makes sure that she reaches out to the people who are so far gone that nobody talks to them. She goes and sits with them. She says they repeat their stories, but she can see how important it is for them to have someone hear their story. So she does this, and Lalita doing the same thing. This is how we are. This is what it is to be a child of the mother. It's always to be looking, always to be ready, always to be tender, listening for that sound of the divine, listening for the sound of the divine. A neighbor. Revered sir, what are the doctrines of Vedanta? Master. The Vedanta says, I am he. Brahman is real, and the world illusory. Even the I is illusory. Only the supreme Brahman exists. But the I cannot be got rid of. Therefore, it is good to have the feeling, I am the servant of God, his son, his daughter, his devotee. For the Kali Yuga, the path of bhakti is especially good. One can realize God through bhakti too. As long as one is conscious of the body, one is also conscious of objects. Form, taste, smell, sound, and touch These are the objects. It is extremely difficult to get rid of the consciousness of objects, and one cannot realize I am he as long as one is aware of objects. That's a extremely tall order right there, and that's exactly why he's telling us that bhakti is the better path for this day and age, because we just don't have the support and the environment for being able to forget objects, to not experience objects. I mean, that is he's talking about it as if it's a beginning stage or as if it's an early state, but that's an extremely advanced space to be, to where the world of objects actually disappears for you. So this is why he recommends bhakti. The sannyasi is very little conscious of worldly objects, but the householder is always engrossed in them. Therefore, it is good for him to feel, I am the servant of God. So this is wonderful teaching here, because, it's again that grace of Mother, the love of God, coming up with all manner of ways that we can reach him or her, all manners of ways that we can be touched by God, by the divine. And it's if one way is too difficult, do something else. If you can't do your full time this way, do something else, but do it in the presence of the Mother. Sit there, tell her, I can't sit here for 45 minutes. Mom, I can't do this. Let me sing you a song. I'll sing you a song now instead. It's up to you, but mother will work with you. Take all of your troubles, explain to her all the things that you can't renounce. Tell her what you love about them. Describe to her how they capture you and how they move you. Tell her about what you long for and what you're hoping to find in these things. Tell her that you know that they're not real, that you understand that, but you can't see that. You can't experience that. Mother will sit there so sweetly and hear every word of it and give you an answer that will move you forward, that will take you a step closer to the divine. Have that kind of dependence on God. Let God be that real. I always share that story. The first time this occurred to me in the monastery, when I was feeling so lonely because a certain person had left. And I was there alone for like 6 months, and I was standing at the top of the stairs by that big picture of of Ramakrishna or Jesus as a baby. And I'm standing there, and Swami Prabhupada walks in, kind of standing at the bottom of the stairs, and he looks up, sees me standing there by the railing, looking extremely emo. And he says, "Oh, what is this?" And starts his way up the stairs. And I tell him, "Oh, Maharaj, I'm so lonely." I said, "I've been alone in this building for 3 months." I said, "I don't know if I can rattle around this nutshell anymore." I said, there's no one to talk to, nothing to do. And, I was getting all ready for this big sign of sympathy when he got to the top of the stairs, that I might get my first hug from Swami Prabhupada. So he comes to the top of the stairs and he keeps walking. He walks right by me, doesn't even pause, doesn't touch me, just walks right by me, goes into his room, starts to shut the door. Just before the door shuts all the way out, he peeks out and he looks at me and he says, "So go to the shrine and shut the door." And I was furious. Oh my God, I was so mad. I was like, he doesn't care about me at all. like I could explode into flames right now and he wouldn't even open that door to look back out at me. And so I threw my little internal tantrum, but I went and I sat in the shrine. And boy, I got a lesson that day, because he had told me, go to the shrine, take refuge. And I thought to myself, wow, how is it? At that time, I guess I was like 35. And I thought to myself, how is it that I've actually lived 35 years as a person, who at times thought he was God aware, and that never once have I actually gone to the shrine for a refuge. When I got lonely, I would call my friends. When I felt down, I'd call my mother. When I needed attention, go out to dinner or go to a movie or go to the clubs. Or I had 1,000 refuges in the world. And each one of them, well, if I feel this way, I do this. If I need this something, I do that. And those are all the refuges that I would use. And never once did I go to the shrine because I was feeling restless or because I was feeling lonely or because I was depressed or because of whatever. Never occurred to me to go to the shrine. And I thought to myself, God has not been real to me in all my days, in all my life. God has never been a real solution to my troubles. Yeah, I would pray. I would mention things in prayer, but I never had any expectation that God would actually do something or that somehow the problem would actually be fixed. And that day in the shrine was the first time, the first time that I went in there at the instructions of Swami Prabhupada, and I laid it all out. I laid it all out to Mother. I told her all about it, and the consolation that I got and the strength that I got, carried me through all these years. They're still carrying me through there because I've learned, I don't need all of those refuges out there. I need one. I need one. And this one actually changes me. This one actually makes me the better me, moves me forward, helps me deal and helps me learn and helps me grow. It doesn't just give me peace by forgetfulness like the world. That's the only difference between the Mother as refuge and anything else in the world. Everything else, every other form of refuge in the world, try it and you will see. All it can do is offer you forgetfulness. When you're finished with that drinking, when you're finished with that smoking, when you're finished with that dancing, when you're finished with that boyfriend, and you go home and sit on the edge of your bed, all of your troubles are there still. You were just distracted for a while. But with the divine as refuge, the promise is there to you. You will be changed. You will be changed. Therefore, it is good for him to feel, I am the servant of God. Neighbor, sir, we are sinners. What will happen to us? Master, all the sins of the body fly away if one chants the name of God and sings his glories. He's not going to let you make a big deal out of how bad you are. He's not going to let you impress anybody with what an awful person you are. The birds of sin dwell in the tree of the body. Singing the name of God is like clapping your hands. As at the clap of the hands, the birds in the trees fly away, so do our sins disappear at the chanting of God's name and glories. So what has he just shown you there? If you won't let yourself go before the Lord because of the way you feel or the way you think your life has been or the condition you think you're in, he says the solution, sit down where you are, start clapping your hands and start singing about how cool the divine is. Start singing, just looking around you, start looking around and seeing it all as the handiwork of the beloved, and start singing. And don't sing a song that's already been written. Sing one that's being written as you sing. Go into the heart and find your words. Dance a little bit. Do a goofy little jig. The best one you can, of course, but do it. This is how we grow. This is how love manifests. This is how God manifests. If you're not seeing enough God in life, if you're not seeing God, then you're not provoking God. Provoking God through kindness, through compassion, through love, through singing, through dancing, through just enjoying the presence, meditating, praying, that all of these things spark love. And while we're sitting there looking at the image, thinking that the image is God, the love that we're feeling in the heart is actually where God is. Where love is felt and experienced, there is God. And so you want to see God more, then do more loving things. Keep love in the forefront of your mind, and you will see God everywhere. Again, you find that the water of a reservoir dug in a meadow is evaporated by the heat of the sun. Likewise, the water of the reservoir of sin is dried up by the singing of the name and the glories of God. Right? And what's beautiful is in all of these examples, none of them has you as the doer. You're not the one getting rid of your sin. You're not the one making yourself virtuous. You're not the one who's becoming friendlier and more compassionate. You know, the divine does this just by merely having the thought of the beloved in the mind, clears away these things, makes way for your nature to show through. Because the point is, you don't have to be made virtuous. You are virtue itself. You just have to remember, and you have to know. And as soon as it comes to your awareness, that will take you forward. That true self will begin to manifest more and more. So just put yourself in the light of awareness, the light of God, and all will be all right. You must practice it every day. The other day at the circus, I saw a horse running at top speed with an Englishwoman standing on one foot on its back. How much she must have practiced to acquire that skill. Weep at least once to see God. These then are the two means, practice and passionate attachment to God. That is to say, restlessness of the soul to see him. Sri Ramakrishna began his midday meal with the devotees. It was about 1 o'clock. A devotee sang in the courtyard below, "Awake, mother, awake! How long thou hast been asleep in the lotus of the Muladhara. Fulfill your secret function, mother. Rise to the 1,000-petaled lotus within the head, where mighty Shiva has his dwelling. Swiftly pierce the 6 lotuses and take away my grief, O essence of consciousness." Hearing the song, Sri Ramakrishna went into samadhi. His whole body became still. His hand remained touching the plate of food. He could not eat anymore. After a long time, his mind came down partially to the plane of the sense world, and he said, "I want to go downstairs." A devotee led him down very carefully. Still in an abstracted mood, he sat near the singer. The song had ended. The master said to him very humbly, "Sir, I want to hear the chanting of the mother's name again." The musician sang, "Awake, mother, awake. How long you have been asleep in the lotus of the Muladhara." The master again went into ecstasy. February 25th, 1883. After his noon meal, the master conversed with the devotees. Ram, Kedar, Nitya Gopal, M. The others had arrived from Calcutta. Rakal, Harish, Latu, and Hazra were living with the master. Mr. Chowdhury, who had 3 or 4 university degrees and was a government officer, was also present. He had recently lost his wife and had visited the master several times for peace of mind. Master to Ram and the other devotees. Devotees like Rakal, Narendra, and Bhavanat, they can be called Nitya Siddha. Their spiritual consciousness has been awake since their very birth. They assume human bodies only to impart spiritual illumination to others. There is another class of devotees known as the Kripa Siddha. That is to say, those on whom the grace of God descends all of a sudden and who at once attain his vision and knowledge. Such people may be likened to a room that has been dark 1,000 years, which, when a lamp is brought into it, becomes light immediately, not little by little. Those who lead a householder's life should practice spiritual discipline. They should pray eagerly to God in solitude. Turning to Mr. Chaudhary, God cannot be realized through scholarship. Who indeed can understand the things of the Spirit through reason? No, all should strive for devotion to the lotus feet of God. Infinite are the glories of God. How little can you fathom them? How can you ever find out the meaning of God's ways? Brahma was none other than one of the 8 Vasus, but even he shed tears on his bed of arrows. He said, "How astonishing! God himself is the companion of the Pandava brothers, and still there is no end to their troubles and sorrows. Who can ever understand the ways of God?" A man thinks, "I have practiced a little prayer and austerity, so I have gained a victory over others." But victory and defeat lie with God. I have seen a prostitute dying in the Ganges and retaining consciousness to the end. This is that importance of not judging. We don't know the inner beings of people, and when all the devotees complained to Thakur about Girish, coming drunk to the temple and chastising him in front of them, when they all complained and wanted Girish removed, the master scolded them. He said, "You do not have the eyes to see. You do not know what I see when I look at Girish." And that's something beautiful for all of us to know, that whatever our condition is, that's not what Thakur is looking at when he looks at you. If you have just come fresh out of the bar, drunk off your butt, misbehaving yourself in as many ways as you can think of, and you bump into Thakur on the sidewalk, that's not what he's going to notice. He's going to notice the heart. He's going to notice you, that realized you, that he's coaxing out little by little over time. He'll see the realized you. And in that state, you will remember the realized you. You will become aware of this realized self that's covered over in drunkenness at the moment. That's what it is to know the holy, to know the beloved. So he's saying here, that this you can practice your little bits, and if you think that practicing your little bits is what's making you a righteous person or making you a better person, he says, don't give that too much credence. This all lies with the Lord. I've seen, a prostitute dying next to the Ganges, which is a very blessed event, to die next to the Ganges. And to be able to hold your consciousness until the end is considered to be a very holy act. And here Ramakrishna is saying, don't you go counting your little practices as making you great. He says that lies in the hands of the Lord. He sees what's in you. He said, I've seen a prostitute dying on the bank of the river, remaining conscious till the very end. So just know, this is a matter of the heart. And your heart and make sure that you present that heart when you see the divine. Mr. Chaudhary, how can one see God? Master, not with these eyes. God gives one divine eyes, and only then can one behold him. God gave Arjuna divine eyes so that he might see his universal form. It's from the 11th chapter of the Gita, when he has that vision of God, that terrifying vision of God, where everybody is being eaten, getting gnashed, getting caught between his teeth. That as he sees the universe as it is, with these living beings, all of us dying, being born, fighting, and growing, and, all of the pains of life. And there, he gets so frightened, he tells God, no, that's enough. I don't want to see this anymore. Take your benign form back. And so he becomes Krishna again, But to keep that knowledge, this is your big brother. I remember my big brother tried to get me in so many fights when I was in middle school. He'd get on the bus and the bully would be there picking on my brother. My brother'd be like, my brother's going to take care of you. And the bully'd like, yeah, where's your brother? And I'd be like, oh God, here we go. But God is a better big brother than that. Your philosophy is mere speculation. It only reasons. God cannot be realized that way. You cannot know God by knowing things. Can't be done. God cannot remain unmoved if you have raga bhakti, that is, love of God with passionate attachment to him. Do you know how fond God is of his devotees' love? Do you know? It is like the cow's fondness for fodder mixed with oil cake. The cow gobbles it down greedily. Raga bhakti is pure love of God, a love that seeks God alone and not any worldly end. Prahlada had it. Suppose you go to a wealthy man every day, but you seek no favor of him. You simply love to see him. If he wants to show you favor, you say, "No, sir, I don't need anything. I came just to see you." Such is love of God for his own sake. You simply love God. You don't want anything from him in return. And see, this is that magical place. You don't even seek out your own realization, because in God's eyes it's yours already. So we don't go to him with these worldly calculated perspectives of do this for me, do that for me, I want this, I need that. We go to surrender. We go to let go. We go to move out of the mind and to let that peace overcome us, to let that companionship overcome us, so that faith grows, a faith in the knowledge of this pure love, a faith in the knowledge of this pure grace. And in that we find our contentment, and the mind begins to still, and we begin to hear then the voice of God. Anything heard in the silence of the mind is the voice of the divine. Such is the love of God for its own sake. You simply love God and don't want anything from him in return. Saying this, the Master sang, "Though I am never loath to grant salvation, I hesitate indeed to grant pure love. Whoever wins pure love surpasses all. He is adored by men. He triumphs over the three worlds." He continued, "The gist of the whole thing is that one must develop passionate yearning for God and practice discrimination and renunciation." Sir, Mr. Chowdhury, sir, is it not possible to have the vision of God without the help of a guru? Master, Satchitananda himself is the guru. At the end of the Sava Sadhana, just when the vision of the Ishta is about to take place, the guru appears before the aspirant and says to him, "Behold, there is your Ishta." Saying this, the guru merges in the Ishta. He who is the guru is also the Ishta. The guru is the thread that leads to God. Women perform a ritualistic worship known as the Ananta Vrata, the object of worship being the infinite, but actually the deity worshipped is Vishnu. In him are the infinite forms of God. If you ask me which form of God you should meditate upon, I should say fix your attention on that form which appeals to you the most. But know for certain that all forms are the forms of one God alone. Never harbor malice toward anyone. Shiva, Kali, Hari are but different forms of that one. He is blessed indeed who has known all as one. Outwardly he appears as Shiva's devotee, but in his heart he worships Kali, the blissful mother, and with his tongue he chants aloud Lord Hari's name. The body does not endure without a trace of lust, anger, and the like. You should try to reduce them to a minimum. Looking at Kedar, the master said, "He's very nice. He accepts both the absolute and the relative. He believes in Brahman, but he also accepts the gods and the divine incarnations in human form." In Kedar's opinion, Sri Ramakrishna was such an incarnation. Looking at Nitya Gopal, the master said to the devotees, "He is in a lofty mood." To Nitya Gopal, "Don't go there too often. You may go once in a while. She may be a devotee, but she is a woman too. Therefore, I warn you. The sannyasi must observe very strict discipline. He must not look even at the picture of a woman. But this rule does not apply to householders. An aspirant should not associate with a woman, even though she is very much devoted to God. A sannyasi, even though he may have subdued his passions, should follow this discipline to set an example to householders. Worldly people learn renunciation by seeing the complete renunciation of a monk. Otherwise, they sink more and more. A sannyasi is a world teacher. All right.